Welcome back, everyone, to Movies You Missed. I'm so glad you could join us. If you are new to this, first of all, I'd like to welcome back our entire team, Catherine, Riley, Jason, and Daniel. Welcome back, everybody.
Hello.
Hey.
Well, I'm glad that you guys could join us, and I'm glad that you could join us as well as you watch and listen to this. Movies You Missed is a 7-week series that we are running, and we thought it would be fun for us to share movies that mattered to us in our youth and have conversations about them. However, Catherine and I are showing our age, and we were not allowed to pick a film before, or we were not allowed to pick a film after the year 2000. Whereas Riley, Daniel, and Jason have the opportunity to pick a movie that mattered to them, but they couldn't pick anything before the year 2000, something that spoke to them in their generation. And so this has been fun. This week, we are going to talk about comedies that matter to us. And I'm really looking forward to having this conversation together. So, Daniel, why don't you tell us, what movie did you pick?
Yeah, so we decided to go with the 2013 film, This Is the End. It was pretty fun, but I think first, why don't we hear from you, gray-haired peoples? What movie did we watch for you guys?
Well, I mean, we picked an absolute classic that we wanted to make sure that we educated you about. Catherine, do you want to talk about what our film was at all?
Sure. Our film was the 1992 classic Encino Man. And in this movie, two high schoolers, Stoney and Dave, played by Pauly Shore and Sean Astin, never mind in the actual Encino Man, was played by Brendan Fraser. And they find a caveman and try to pass him off as a student in their high school to become more popular while they're digging a pool in the Sean Astin's character's backyard to try to have this massive final thing, because they've been seen as quote unquote losers their entire high school career. So, I mean, classic coming of age. And it was great. Still holds.
Well,
I like the movie because I feel like, I mean, watching it now, it was kind of okay, but for its time, it was supposed to be hilarious. And with Pauly Shore and all of his stuff, I mean, he continued to make movies just like this character throughout his career. I know that when I was younger, I thought Pauly Shore and all of his catchphrases, he was the goofy one. But I really, really disliked Sean Astin's character as an adult. I found him to be narcissistic and just a jerk, where Pauly Shore's character actually turned out to be the one with feelings and a heart. So it was interesting to see a young Brendan Fraser. But I mean, it seemed like a high school movie to me, like all other high school movies, except this one had a caveman.
We had a hard time picking comedy in some ways because we have very different tastes in what makes us laugh.
I have good taste. You not so much.
Yeah, that's right. That's the problem. But no, in all seriousness, I mean, for this particular pick, the reason that I went with it is I really do think it is a very, very 80s, 90s comedy. And I say 80s, 90s because it's early 90s. And so it feels like a transition to me, because I was watching it again. I'm like, man, this just seems like it could have been made in the mid to late 80s, but putting 90s references in it. And I will say, Kat, I have to say, I don't know if the best defense of the film is that, I mean, Pauly Shore made movies just like this for the rest of his career.
No, they were terrible. And he had a very specific role that he played in all of them. I don't know why we didn't pick Clueless.
We could have picked Clueless. But we went with
I've
this.
seen it.
If
I
we
mean,
picked
it's also a
Clueless-
romance, like romantic. But
Yeah,
I love
if we picked
Clueless.
Clueless, we would have won this category hands down. Like it would have been like done.
yeah,
Oh,
I would
yeah.
like to. But they've seen Clueless too. They hadn't seen it.
That's right. That's right. The rules are is that we had
Some of them
both
had.
seen it, but the others had not.
Yes.
But
It was wholesome, and it was funny, and it was a take on the American middle class society.
yes, I have to say this. I can't believe how much I liked Pauly Shore in this movie. I can't.
Yeah, he was great.
I wanted to punch his lights out when I was a teenager. I just
Mm-hmm.
really did, but I like him in this. I was a huge. I still want the best for Brendan Fraser. I
Yeah.
adore Brendan Fraser. He's been hit and miss over his career, but my gosh, I love Brendan Fraser. It has not aged as well as I had hoped in some ways. There's some stuff in there that it was like, yeah, that's just how I remember things were in the mid 90s or the early 90s. But that doesn't mean that it is aged well. But I will say it is so ridiculous, and Brendan Fraser commits so well to being this idiotic caveman that, I mean, we wanted to show you something that really sort of epitomizes comedy from our era. This was a big one. This was right on the tipping point to Jim Carrey and Adam Sandler, right on the tipping point. It actually, that's why I say this sort of feels like a transition from the 80s to the 90s, because it was sort of flips into the more nutty, bizarre type of comedy after this movie, I think.
And it was one of the movies where like catchphrases kind of followed after it for a little while.
Oh yeah.
All in all,
Squeeze in the juice or wheeze in the juice. I'm sorry. Sorry, we all said wheeze in the juice because we were cool. And that's what So that's why we picked it. That's why we like it. What did you
guys loved it?
Yeah, please settle down. We know how excited you are to gush over Encino Man. Please tell us what you think.
I actually didn't mind it. I went into this movie expecting to hate it. With complete honesty, I went into it expecting to really, really dislike it. But there were some parts that like genuinely made me like laugh out loud, and I kind of surprised myself at laughing. I know, Daniel, I know. But the one scene after like they were in the gas station and Brendan Fraser's character comes back and puts on the sunglasses and says, "I'll be back," in the Terminator voice, actually genuinely made me laugh. Yes, there were some parts that, especially right at the end, but I know we talked about that right after we finished watching the movie. But like, all in all, like, it wasn't a bad movie. I just wanted to punch Dave a lot and in the face. And I actually really loved Stoney. Like, he was annoying, but like, I loved Stoney. He was great. But yeah, no, that's what I felt about it, to be honest.
That is a typical PG version of a stoner that there is not one ounce of weed in that movie.
They make reference to it. They make reference to it a lot.
Did they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't catch any of that.
Remember when he was trying to convince Stoney to help him get the caveman out? He was telling him about all of the things that he could buy, and he literally said bud.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's true.
It was always insinuated that Stoney was a stoner, but they never actually like showed anything or did anything with that.
And I don't think if you were really young, you would know what they were talking about either.
Oh,
like
no,
they made
no,
it really.
not at all.
Not at that time. probably not. Like this wasn't Fast Times at Richmond High or anything like that. Or even PCU. This was more targeting younger people, I suppose. Okay. All right. So Riley, what I heard from Riley, he is obsessed with Encino Man now.
Yeah, loves
That
it.
is, in
Loves
fact,
it.
my exact words. Yes.
He's gonna be they're gonna be stony for Halloween. I would love to see that, by the way.
Fantastic. Daniel, Jason, what did you think of Encino Man?
It was okay. It was very 80s or whenever it came out. There's a lot of it that wouldn't slide in today's environment.
Yeah.
I didn't laugh throughout the entire movie. I felt like it was cheesy. And then I didn't like, what was it, Dave? That
Yeah.
he that scene where he's about to dump Brendan Fraser in like the middle of the highway or whatever. He's like, goodbye, get out of here. And then he gets the girl later. I'm like, this guy, like, standards for characters must have been really low back then. Because he's kind of evil. Like, he knows this guy can't even like speak English that well. He's like, get out of here. You have no social insurance or anything. No identity. Just get out of here.
And the only money that he gave him was to be able to play the game at the arcade.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. A pocket full of quarters.
Here, be homeless. You have some quarters. You'll make it.
Just because the girl liked him more than Dave.
It's like getting rid of your.
Which is entirely fair, I will say.
It's like getting rid of your dog because
Yeah.
the girl you like is like, oh, I only want to see the dog. Get out of here, dog. Here's some quarters.
Why would you give the dog quarters? Why did you do that? Here's
Round. Yeah, it's pretty awful. And then, I mean, his intention in the beginning of the film is like he wants to exploit him to be popular. So it's like, oh, I don't know. I guess that's humor back then, but I don't
No,
know.
he's terrible from the beginning. You're right.
No, that was just our lives back then. That was that was what life was like. We exploited our friends to become popular.
Yeah, it was okay. It was an interesting premise too. Didn't make a lot of sense, but I guess that I don't know. It's okay.
Oh, we're gonna argue logic in our films.
Yeah.
Are we? Oh, we're gonna throw down later.
I think this is the end. It's just a bit more logical. Man. Yeah, that was my thoughts.
Hmm.
All right, Daniel.
I mean, it was fine. I kind of went into it thinking it was going to be better than what it was.
Oh.
And then it was fine. It was like there were a few moments where I chuckled, but like there was nothing for me personally where I was like, "Oh, this is so funny." I think like the plot is pretty cool, like, you know, finding a caveman, but I feel like it was also so predictable. Like, you know, he's going to have a hard time adapting to, like, I guess to him the future. You know, like with every like 90s teen movie, the not popular guy wants the popular girl, and they, you know, were best friends when they were younger, but as soon as like puberty hit, she changed. Like it was pretty predictable, and it wasn't that funny. I did really like Stoney's character though. He was definitely my favorite character. I think any time that I did have like a laugh, it was because of something he said or did. I don't really know if I would consider this a comedy. Definitely like a teen coming of age, like that sort of movie, but I don't know. I feel like it kind of lacked in the comedy department.
Wow.
Daniel's just like,
I don't
Stephen
know.
Cat forgot about the fact that comedies have to be funny.
I'm not gonna lie. I think we said this before. This was going to be a tough week. I knew
Mhm.
this was going to be a tough week for all of us because the truth is, it is really hard to agree on anything being funny. It's actually much easier to agree on that action movie was cool or that drama was gripping than it is to say, man, that was hilarious. Like even this movie, Kat and I went back and forth about it because we had different movies we thought were hilarious. And this was sort of in the Venn diagram as sort of the middle point. But which is fine. But I'm
And
just
a movie that you guys hadn't seen.
and that they hadn't seen exactly. There's that factor too.
Should have kept it that way.
Oh man,
We've exposed you to Gremlins and now Encino Man / California Man.
that's
You're
okay.
like
Kat,
painting us.
our next 4 picks are killer.
No, they're solid.
They're solid picks.
We'll see.
We've gotten through the bumpy picks and now it's straight gold from here on in. I'm telling you right now.
Pretty sure you said that about Gremlins and Encino Man as well.
I did not. I did not say that. I knew what we were going to get with Gremlins as a horror film, and I knew what was coming with Encino Man. Actually, I'm thrilled that you enjoyed it more than I thought you would.
Oh no, like, please do not get me wrong. I did not. Like, I am not going to go back and watch that movie again, okay? However, it was okay. Like, it was
Tony's
better
so
than I thought it
fashionable.
was going to be.
Stoney was
apparently
ahead of
there's
the
50
time.
other movies where he's in it playing the exact same character, so maybe one of those ones are better.
Hey, let's not kid ourselves. Brendan Fraser did the same thing. From this, hello, Blast from the Past is this movie.
Yeah, he went into the future.
When do you go in the
That's what he did.
Technically,
This
so did
movie
he.
as well.
He did that in this movie.
He went into the 90s, but in the future movie he went into. And
That's
let's
right.
just forget the mummy movies.
Well, this movie set him up for running around in a loincloth, which he did George of the Jungle
Yep.
shortly after. You know what? I wish that we had gotten more of the Mummy Brendan Fraser in his career so far. Like, The Mummy was a great action film, even though it was exactly like Indiana Jones. Oh,
I read the books. They are exactly like Indiana Jones, but they're pretty good.
I'm meh. I think I saw the first Mummy and I was meh.
Oh, I love it. I love the first one. The first one's so much fun. Doesn't make any sense, but he's so good. But
So clearly we win comedy.
yeah, but there's no reason to talk about anything else. I mean, we're sort of done here. That's what I'm getting.
Mm.
No, I understand everything that you guys are saying about it.
Yeah.
Man. I think Kat will back you guys up on that as well. I can't speak for her.
Yeah, it wasn't great. But it was at the time.
It
Buddy.
Was it? Was
No,
it
I
that
don't
great at the
know.
time?
To be
I'm
fair,
very confused. I think I'm just like the trauma from the younger people's pick tonight has just like erased the purity of Encino Man.
Yeah, let's shift.
The thing was when I was watching it, there was a lot of scenes that I wouldn't laugh at, but I was like thinking in my head that like, okay, I could see how this could be funny at a time. You know, like I was trying to keep an open mind. There were scenes that made me laugh, but then there were scenes that didn't. But I was like, I could see how someone could find this funny. You know,
Very
maybe a
empathetic of you.
blind and deaf person could maybe chuckle at it.
Helen Keller.
Oh,
Wow.
wow. Okay, let's go.
Speaking of that, needing that for humor, what did you guys pick?
That's very fair.
again, we went with This Is the End, 2013 apocalypse, end of the world of biblical proportions, starring Seth Rogen, Jonah Hill, Rihanna was in it for a bit, Emma Watson. And as we know, there was a big apocalypse, end of the world. People were being sucked up to heaven, and a lot of people were left on the ground. I guess we can jump in to talk about why we went with this one.
Yeah, tell us why you liked it.
I don't know, Riley. Riley or JP, if one of you want to go first.
I remembered this movie being a lot more funny than I found it this time. However, when I watched this movie before, it was a long time ago, but I do remember finding it actually funny, which is why when it was brought up, I was like, yeah, let's go with that, because like, I don't know. But it's kind of like just a dumb kind of funny movie, which like, you know, like can be nice ever so often. Like it's not really one that you have to sort of think about it. It's kind of a weird plot. It's weird characters. It's just weird. But there are times, like there were still points in quite a few, more than Encino Man, in this movie that I actually laughed at. But yeah, no, I still think it's a pretty good movie. I just remember it being a little more funny.
I don't remember this movie that much. It was really like, what I remember from it was the apocalypse and like all these celebrities were in it. And when I watched it, it was in the theaters, and like it was like way funnier because everyone's laughing in the theaters. So you're like, even if it's not that funny, you're like, oh, everyone's laughing, I guess I'll have to. It's okay. It's funny because it didn't age that well, and it's only a couple years ago, which is nuts. Like I would say it aged worse than Encino Man in terms of like the stuff they said, especially with like Me Too and everything, and like everything they did. Yeah, it's an okay movie. It's got funny moments, I think, but I also remember it being more epic. But yeah,
Well, to be fair, how old were you when you saw it? Probably like 14.
it was a while. Yeah, it was a while ago.
If it was
Whenever it came out in theaters.
Would you say 2013? Is it 2013?
Yeah.
So that's 8 years ago. So you would have been like maybe 15, 16.
Yeah. I also saw it with all guys, so
Yeah.
I think that may have helped. It doesn't feel like a chick movie at all.
There's such strong female representation in this film.
Oh yeah.
Emma Watson scene? Well, she was stronger than them.
That is true.
That happened.
That was not a good scene. I'm sorry, I'm thinking back on it now. That was a really bad scene.
Oh yeah, where they're all talking about like who gets her or whatever. Yeah, it's pretty.
Well, in their defense, they weren't talking about that. They were arguing about not wanting to do that. And
who would do it?
Well, arguing, yeah, but they weren't arguing about getting the chance. They were pointing fingers and saying, I bet it's that guy. I'm not defending the film or even that scene. I'm just saying they weren't arguing about who would get to. It was almost the opposite, right? But
they're woke.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Daniel, why is this your favorite film of all time?
Well, I think this is gold star, best movie ever made. Ever.
Winner of 19 Academy Awards, actually.
It should have gotten for every single category: drama, action, comedy.
Obviously.
Best actor, best supporting actor, best actress, best supporting actress, soundtrack or something, I don't know, Broadway musical award. No, this I agree with Riley. I think back when I seen it, I think I've only seen it like twice, and it was when it kind of first came out, 2013, and then maybe 2 at the latest 3 years later. So I was like 13 to 16 years old, which I feel like that's kind of the age group that this movie is made for. Like all of the like weed jokes, the touching yourself jokes, like I feel like that's like teenage like level comedy. So I definitely remember it being funnier. Um, I am really disappointed because this was one of the movies that I picked, but like to be fair, I was literally just going through Netflix and I typed in like comedy and was going through and was like, what about this one? Like, have you guys seen this one or this one? And this one was the one that we were like, oh, we've all seen it. Let's go with it. So I kind of wish we went and found a different one because, like, I think there are every other comedy movie is better. But I think I laughed at more parts in this movie than I did with Encino Man. I cringed a lot more for this movie than I did with Encino Man. I think the plot is fine. Like I feel like the early 2010s there was a lot of like that kind of disaster, end of the world. Like that was a whole thing.
Well, 2012.
That
2012 was supposed
true.
to be the end of the year, end of the world Mayan calendar thing, right?
Yeah. So I mean, I kind of like that they took it and made it into a comedy, not just a complete like disaster drama action. But yeah, it definitely does not hold up. I mean, to be fair, even like in 2013, it didn't hold up then. But it definitely now it's, you know, just kind of what is it like? It's just not a lot of thought was put into the jokes, so it's all just kind of like dumb, you know, what joke can I get out rather than, you know, actually like, oh, what's going to fit the scene, how is it going to, you know, what's going to actually make people laugh. But I think like, you know, for the most part it was fine. um I think it was funnier than Encino Man as a whole, but I think as a movie, as a plot, Encino Man was better, but as a comedy, this one was better. So I'm kind of like
I feel like I should have
fence.
seen this coming though, because I've found like any time that I go back and watch anything of Seth Rogen's, I just don't find it as funny as I used to. I don't know if it's his humor or anything like that, but just I don't know. Anytime I go back and watch something of Seth Rogen's, it's just gets gradually less funny as I watch it.
I think it's because all of his movies, it's all the exact same type of humor. Like, which again, I mean, if it's what he knows how to do, like perfect, that's great. But I feel like it's such like the movies might be made for older audiences because of what it talks about and what happens, but like it's such like young to middle teenage humor. Um, I feel like we should have talked more. I feel like we should have went with something with like Melissa McCarthy because that would have been hilarious. But whatever. So what about you, oldies? What did you think of this comedic masterpiece? Great, thanks.
Do you want to go first, or
Awesome.
do you want me to go first?
I don't care. I'm easy. I mean, I can go first if you want, and then you
It
can
doesn't
round
matter
us
to
out.
me in the least. Doesn't matter to me in the least.
Oh my gosh,
Um,
geriatrics pick.
I'll go first.
Okay.
I had gone my whole life without seeing the devil's penis, and now I have.
Perfect.
Is
And
it everything you thought it would be?
that's and more. You know, I can't even. I just can't even. I didn't like it. I mean, and it had nothing to do with the subject matter because I'm all for the subject matter. I'm like, no.
You're all for the subject
I'm all for
matter?
the subject matter. I
Whoa,
mean, the subject
everything?
matter of end of days, and I was fine with them making fun of like the rapture and all that stuff in this one. That content, I was totally fine with. It's just, it just feels so. It felt so lazy. It just feels like a lazy comedy. It's really them in a house making sex jokes and for and beating it to death, beating these jokes to death, and it almost feels like improv, which is fine by me. I was texting JT when we were watching it. I said it actually reminded me of Grown Ups in some ways. Have any of you seen the Grown Ups movies? In that, I mean, they're totally different films, but in that, Grown Ups was literally Adam Sandler with his buddies just making a movie because they felt like making a movie, and they had some, but they even that felt like it had more story than this. But that's how it felt like with this one, and I actually don't mind that. I can respect that because it's like Rogan and his pals doing their thing, having like they would have had a blast for a few weeks making this movie. And I can almost guarantee you there are tons of scenes that didn't make it because they just kept probably doing stuff and seeing if it worked. But I just think it's kind of lazy. It's like an all-star lazy comedy, and to quote JT, doesn't make a lot of sense. But I mean, I don't. There was Jonah Hill made me laugh.
Yeah.
Jonah Hill made me laugh throughout this whole movie. He kept me interested. Even demon possessed, he was funnier than the other guys. And I have nothing like. I actually I love Craig Robinson and I love Jay Baruchel way more than I like Rogan and what's his name, Franco. But I don't know. Kat, what did you think?
I've seen it before, which makes me mad at myself that I've sat through it a second time. I thought I was crazy, and then I looked up Rotten Tomatoes while I was watching it because I was like, am I stupid to hate it this much?
No.
And Rotten Tomatoes actually gave it, and to be fair, I don't really put a lot of trust into Rotten Tomatoes because there's been stuff that's been rated really low that I have loved, and there's been stuff that's been rated really high that I've hated. And this one was one of them because it got 83% on Tomato Meter and 71% for audience satisfaction.
It got an 83%.
Yeah, and 71 for the audience score. Pardon me?
This is certified fresh?
Yeah. So
why are you so surprised?
Really?
I'm dead inside now. I'm dead inside.
So I looked it up, but I just found it. I love comedy. You know me, I'm not afraid of swearing or sex jokes or anything like that. I feel like if it's funny, it's funny. But if you beat a dead horse and you're just a bunch of rich, mostly white comedians that have copious amounts of money and copious amounts of fan base so that you can make movies like this, and it is just hanging out with your friends, good for you. Maybe you guys can look back and enjoy this. I just found it highly offensive on so many levels, and I don't want to be that person who's oh my goodness, they swore, they made jokes about masturbation or this and that. That's not the stuff that bothered me. It was just the continuous beating of the dead horse, and it just seemed to me that every part of it was just how much can we push the envelope with every scene with no rhyme or reason. For me, your humor has to it can be offensive in language and content, but it has to be witty and it has to be funny. And I really found this wasn't. I mean, Seth Rogen, Super Bad was great. Like, there's a one-off two movies, and they were offensive too. But yeah, like I find that they tend to take that humor and they keep pushing it. Like he did another one, Seth Rogen, and I think James Franco was in it. Correct me if I'm wrong. The Sausage Party.
Oh,
I got 4 minutes into that movie and I turned it off. And I think just all of the sexualized jokes and stuff like that with the now information that we have about James Franco and how he treated women and how he treated them as an acting teacher and using his power and his authority to just assault and basically take advantage of women because of his place of power. Hearing him make all those masturbation jokes and like sex jokes was just like, it raised the ick factor for me, like by a long shot. And yeah, I mean, I will say I agree that Jonah Hill kind of made it like funnier for me, like when he was demon possessed and he was kind of like, yeah, that's kind of true. Like, you know, like when he was making those kind of like one line side comments, that made me laugh.
Yeah, the it's not that compelling scene. I remember that made me laugh during the first time, and it made me laugh this time as well.
Yeah, like I found that was smart. Like you're demon possessed, but you're still making kind of snide like comments as part of the group. Like that was the funny part. I just really felt that it was a bunch of males with a lot of money and a lot of, I should say, male presenting people with a lot of money and a lot of time and just like a fun, like guys' weekend kind of thing. I remember with Emma Watson, it was so exciting for everybody to see her not as Hermione because this was her big, like, changing character. But, I mean, she was on for 5 minutes. Like, I didn't care. The jokes and stuff like that about them wanting to make her feel comfortable and then in turn making her not feel comfortable. I'm like, okay. But the one character that just I couldn't at all deal with was, I don't even know who he was played by.
Himself.
Himself. Whatever.
Yeah, he was played by. Well, who was it? The guy who had Channing Tatum on the chain?
Oh, Danny something.
Yeah,
Danny McBride.
Nothing but disgusting, like, filth to me. Like, it was too much. And I honestly don't want to be a Debbie Downer. Like, I do get it. And I thought it was cool that you're seeing stars, like, as themselves. Sorry, Mo has a lot to say on the topic. But yeah, I just was like, kind of feel like I need to, like, shower.
Yeah. You know, here you go. Well, first of all, I agree with everything you said. Because it's not like, and actually, I like what Jason said, because I think he said that this one hasn't this one is aged worse than Encino Man. And I think it has, even though it's like 8 years old. And I think I want us to talk about comedy now in general, because I think it's interesting. But one of the things I thought of watching this movie is like, look at Deadpool. Okay, there's things in Deadpool where you're like, okay, we've come further than that, or and that's as what there will be with every film we show. There will be things that we're like, whoa, that's dated, because so much has happened in the last 3-4 years, so much. But Deadpool is an R-rated comedy. The goal of it is to push the envelope as far as it can, but it's smart, it's witty, and it's a satire of so many things that we already know. And I just didn't get the sense with this one that was the case. Like,
I felt like I had this thought when, I forget who brought it up. I think it actually was you, Steve, saying that it was sort of like lazy comedy. It almost kind of felt like they were just like, they were sitting down to make this movie and they were like, we're going to make this funny just by sticking as many stars in one room as we possibly can. And then people are just going to like it because of that, because they saw whoever it was, whether it be like Rihanna or Seth Rogen or whoever it might be, right? They're like, oh, I remember that person from wherever, so they're just going to like it. But so they sort of like made it as a comedy movie, but kind of put the comedy to second last.
Yeah. Well, Here's what I'd like to know from anybody here, whoever wants to answer. What's funny now? Like in all seriousness, we knew that Encino Man was going to be ridiculous. And I think it's like you guys have said, like this was funnier when you were 15. Well, Encino Man was funnier when we were 15. Like this is the thing that often can happen. But when with both of these films, like I think you guys were absolutely right when you say they haven't aged well. We've talked about that a little bit. I would say it's harder to make a comedy now because so many things are not funny because of all of the change and all the shifting of culture and ideas and views. But I don't know. I would love to hear what you guys think about what is funny.
There are, like you kind of mentioned that comedy is hard to do because everybody finds something different funny. But like a lot of comedies, I guess from 2010 till now, like a lot of them have like pushed the envelope and have just kind of, been gross. Like this movie, like, just had a bunch of gross scenes, like where it was just like, okay, this isn't even funny. But like I feel like it's not, I kind of disagree that it's hard to make a comedy movie nowadays because like just don't be gross and don't be racist, don't be homophobic. Everything else can be made funny, but it's just people, this is what I was thinking, like people just jump back to what's funny. Oh, making fun of a gay character, having a comment about somebody being gay, or doing a black stereotype joke. Like that's just what everybody keeps going back to. Like, well, I guess I shouldn't say everybody, but what a lot of comedians, a lot of comedy movies, they always just jump back to that, which that nowadays is not socially acceptable. To be fair, for the groups, like back in the 90s, like if a comedy movie made a gay joke or a racist joke, everybody's like, oh, well, it was socially acceptable. Well, it wasn't to the groups that it was making fun of. It was funny to, everybody else. And because of, social media now, people are able to express, that it was offensive or that they, don't like that these jokes are being made. But I think it's just like people, a lot of comedy movies get lazy and they throw out, okay, well, what's the stuff that has been known to work, rather than actually making new jokes and coming up with new things. I think, like I mentioned this before, I think Melissa McCarthy is a great comedian. I think, like, I'm trying to think. I'm probably going to be wrong, but I don't think she's ever made like an offensive joke in a movie. I think she does comedy really well, especially like improv comedy. I've seen a lot of like videos on YouTube where it's like, a deleted scene where Melissa McCarthy goes on about whatever is happening in the scene, and it's just literally whatever keeps popping into her head. And from what I've seen, none of it has been like racist, homophobic, xenophobic, anything like that. Has it kind of pushed and been a bit like gross and kind of like, oh, this is a joke about like fisting you and pulling your throat out of your butthole? Yes, but I feel like she kind of does it in a smart way where it somehow still is funny. But I think like comedy nowadays, like anything can be funny. It's just stop being lazy and going back to, making jokes about, racial stereotypes, about being gay or part of the LGBTQ plus community, or being fat. Like, stop going back to the lazy jokes and, come up with new things, and you can be funny and attract a wider audience.
This is a topic that is discussed a lot, and especially a lot right now, like on TikTok. I find a lot people will say like pretty much exactly what you're saying, Steve, and the fact that like, okay, well then what is funny anymore? Like they'll say like, you can't joke about anything anymore, which just isn't true. The thing is that you can't joke about anyone anymore. It's not the anything that isn't funny, it's the anyone. The jokes aren't funny anymore when they are being targeted specifically at someone, and often those people that those jokes are being targeted at are a marginalized group of people, and that's just how these jokes are. And the thing is that just isn't accepted anymore, and that, and I'm going to say we, in the fact of like our generation type thing especially, have been standing up against these types of jokes, just being like, they're just not funny. Like making a joke and expecting it to be funny just because it's about a group of people or about something that someone can't control doesn't automatically make it funny. And which is sort of why like even with Encino Man, like, yeah, there were things in there that didn't age well, but there were a lot of jokes in Encino Man that I didn't find funny just because it wasn't my sense of humor. But the thing is that with This Is the End, the Seth Rogen film, there were a lot of things I didn't find funny because I found it gross. And I think that's the difference. Like jokes can be not funny, but make them not be funny just because you don't find them funny, not because it's specifically targeting and attacking a group of people. That's when it becomes not funny, because it's just disgusting.
But is that always the case now? I agree with you guys. I think you're making a great point. When you look at the evolution of comedy, you see more and more, you can see that shift. But I've been thinking about this a lot as we've been over the past week as we've been watching these films. I think the reason the workplace comedy has taken off is because the workplace is sort of a neutral space. So The Office and Parks and Rec can be funny because it's The Office that's funny. You see, because everybody can relate to it. But by this token, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which is now ending, and I don't know if it's related or not. They've not said this. This is the last season of Brooklyn Nine-Nine, but they haven't said why. But I do know they had filmed 4 episodes into the new season. And I mean, Brooklyn Nine-Nine has tackled a lot of social issues. They've done an excellent job of trying to have a balanced racial cast. They've done those things. But man, did they come under fire just because they were a police station.
Yeah, that's garbage to me, because I feel like they've done the most out of any like comedy show out there to have representation, to have those hard discussions, and to even like tackle stuff as in a comedic way, like infertility. Like they've really covered all the bases, and that's when I think it gets to the point where like, where do you draw the line? But I think like what Riley was saying was just like, it doesn't have to always be funny to me. It could be funny to you. We just have different senses of humor, but it just can't be an attack. And I think about all of the stuff that I love and that I think's hilarious. And like, even with the Melissa McCarthy thing, like, yeah, sometimes she's vulgar, but like no more than a man would be vulgar in a comedy, but she's a woman who is doing it. And the thing that I find is funny, and like what you were saying about The Office and Parks and Rec and stuff, and Superstore, I think, is another great show that ended early. And it's all because it's relatable. Like we've all had those jobs, not all of us, but like a majority of people have had those jobs working in the service industry or like working in an office or doing this. And you can relate to it in the sense that like, oh my gosh, I had a boss just like that. Or like, yeah, this customer came in where I worked and it was just like that. Like there's so much of that.
It's about the boss.
Yeah.
than
And you're
than specifically the character of the boss, if that makes sense, right? Like
Mhm.
like the boss, it like they could do all of those jokes, like in the office, they could do all of those jokes, and the boss could be played by anyone. It doesn't really matter who is the boss. The joke is about just the boss figure, which I think is the
Yeah.
difference.
And they give that figure that, you know, is kind of like the collective, like, oh, this person frustrates me and we're all in this together. They can give them a backstory that makes them lovable and makes them like relatable, even though they're in that section. And I find a lot of times that when I'm most relaxed and things are the most funny are relatability to my life, and the fact that a lot of comedians use self-deprecating humor where it's not about anyone else, it's about them and their experiences and how they've made mistakes or been silly in certain ways, where I'm like, oh my gosh, they're laughing about this, so it's okay that I'm laughing with them about it, and I can think of a time where I could relate to that. So, and it's also about the banter. Like if you have a cast that's able to, like Deadpool, there were times where I was like dying laughing. There were also times where I was like, oh my gosh, like I really hope, like I don't even want anyone to hear this. Like it's so offensive. But because of the sarcasm, the kind of banter and the cast that they had, and it wasn't just focused on that, that's where the humor can come out of it. Whereas like I can't relate to these guys sitting in a mansion in the hills and I can't relate to their like lifestyle or want to in any way, shape, or form. So even their comedy, vulgar or not, it's like, yeah, like you're being lazy. Like, yeah, this is your go-to things. But self-deprecating humor, sarcasm, like relatable wittiness, and showing that the person, even though they're annoying, has an actual backstory. And this is why they're like that. And we can kind of laugh at them, but feel for them at the same time. I think that's the best form of comedy.
The best kind of way to look at it is like jokes work and comedy works when you're punching sideways or up. If you're making fun of the boss at work, or if you're, you know, a customer service worker and you're making a joke about, you know, a Karen as a customer, like those are jokes that are kind of punching sideways or punching up, where it's like, you know, I'm not making a joke at the boss because, you know, the boss is a certain race or sexual orientation. I'm making fun because they're the boss and they were, you know, being annoying. But when jokes are punching down at somebody, when it's, you know, making fun of the way that they look, when it's, you know, making fun of their sexual orientation, their race, whatever, then it's just like, why? Like, that's not funny. Like, right now, you're just, you know, you might be sitting on your couch laughing, making these jokes, but the people that are being made fun of, like, are just hurt. And it's like, you and your buddies might find it funny, but you're going to get more laughs out of more people when you're making fun, not making fun, but cracking a joke about somebody who is above you, or doing self-deprecating humor, or um, just not specifically making a joke about a person.
Yeah, you know, it's funny if you want to talk 90s comedies. Um, the name that you probably haven't heard of, but Catherine and I should know well, is are the Farrelly brothers. Now, yeah, for those of you over there, for the younger ones, this name probably means nothing. But the whole thing of the Farrellys through the 90s was they would pick one character trait and then blow it up into a movie. So you had Shallow Hal, who was dating an obese woman but saw her as thin, and he was learning how to love past appearances. You had they had a Siamese twin movie with Greg Kinnear and Matt Damon and all that. They tried. The whole point of their gig was to try to offend you, and that was the thing, because shock comedies had gone away. And then they came back a bit during this Rogan years. That Rogan's not gone, but his comedy, he's gotten older and his comedy's changed a little bit. He still makes all his weed jokes, but he does it differently than he did when he was 10 years ago. But I love what you said there about punching down. I think that's absolutely the case. I don't think that stuff's funny. But there was a time when I did, because I'm not going to lie. Now it's different. Now I'm much more, I'm not going to say woke, because that's not that's not what I mean at all, but I'm more aware of the sorts of things that were toxic. That's the word I'm looking for, that were toxic. So this idea of punching sideways, punching up, I like that. I think it's harder and harder to find a communal experience, even though there are those out there. I think something like The Office works because, yes, it's sort of a superstore. It's a common experience. Yes. But even that, like I said,
I feel like it doesn't necessarily have to be a communal experience. Like I kind of like, I do definitely agree with what like Daniel was saying before, with like the fact that like anything can be funny. Like it can be. It's in how you do the joke. Like it's in whether it's a specifically pointed thing or not, or like the whole like punching up or sideways versus punching down. And like the best way I can explain this is like an experience that I had in where like a joke was really funny until it just really wasn't. Where like we were talking about how like, because I'm adopted, my mom can't do the whole like, I brought you into this world so I can take you out, right? Like we were talking about this and it was really funny, and someone was like, oh, but you know, like she could say that she could sell you, right? And all of this, right? And it's always really, really funny, right? Until someone said, oh yeah, I hear China's looking for some new slaves. And it just was not funny anymore. It was funny to them, but to everyone else, it just wasn't funny anymore. And I think it's exactly what Daniel was saying. It was less of punching sideways or up, in terms of the fact that like, yeah, it was just being jokes sort of made like around me, right? But like I was making them too, right? And then this one person came in with just one joke that was just punching straight down about a specific race of people. And it just wasn't, it was gross. It just wasn't cool anymore. And then it just became not funny. So it's the fact that like, yeah, like me being adopted is not a communal experience in the slightest, right? Like they're not like, I could make a joke about adoption and a lot of people would not be able to relate to that. The majority of people would not be able to relate to that, right? But it can still be funny as long as you're not like, I mean, pardon my language, but like as long as you're not being a dick about it, right? Like, it like as long as you're not being a dick when you're doing the joke, then it's going to be funny. Like as long as it's not being pointed at a specific group of people or specifically like bringing down someone just for the sake of bringing them down, or bringing down a group of people just for the sake of bringing them down.
And I think like exactly what you pointed out, like I kind of laughed when you were talking about that at the beginning, because I know you and I know your family, and and because it is you, it's not self-deprecating in the sense that like it's something that you're saying is bad about yourself, but you're joking about your experience, which makes it funny. But if other people were joking at you and you were not a part of that, then that's not okay. But what makes it funny is that you're embracing it and you're adding to it and you're taking your experience and you're making it funny. But I think too, the way like I'm thinking back to what JT was saying about the fact that like, yeah, you went for this movie, you went with a bunch of guys and everyone in the theater was laughing. And so it's like, why, like it makes it funnier because everyone's doing it and everyone's laughing. And it makes me think of like stuff back in the 90s and 80s where it's like, ooh, like it's not that the jokes or the like satire was, I mean, it was more accepted then than it is now, but it's mostly the fact that it was like a herd mentality. Like those jokes were what all the comedians were doing. They were what all the movies were doing. Like you just never noticed it. And if you did say something, then people just like attacked you kind of for it. Like, oh, you're so sensitive, you're so this. And I think one thing that the younger generation has really opened up and really made come forward in comedy is the fact that you guys talk about it so much. And the fact that it's like, yeah, that was offensive. Or you have the social media outlet to be like, I don't think this is funny and I don't think this is okay. And comedians are kind of hearing that and they're moving forward in that. Whereas if we had said something like the portrayal of the store owner in
Encino Man.
no,
Oh,
Gremlins.
in
Well, also
Gremlins.
Encino Man, but
Yeah, also Encino Man, but like that kind of stuff. It's like if you had said, well, I don't really feel like that's how that person should be portrayed, people would be like, oh my God, you're such an idiot. Take a joke, blah, blah, blah. But with the ability to have these conversations and the ability to see that, like, I was offended by that. And now I'm looking at social media and other people were offended by that. It almost gives you the boldness or like the strength to kind of talk about that stuff. I don't know if that makes sense, but I really appreciate the fact that young people are open to having these conversations of like, yeah, that wasn't funny and this is offensive, and you're not afraid to be like the one person that stands up and says that's not okay, and that you guys have the platform for that now. Because back then it was all about like I remember thinking that this one movie was so great because all of my friends loved it, and I was like, well, if I say I don't love it, then they'll think there's something wrong with me. And like having a lot more of those feelings growing up about stuff than I do now, if that makes sense. So I can totally see the mentality of like, this is funny or this is offensive, but I'm not going to say anything. And then now being in this world, we can say those things and be like, yeah, this isn't funny. And I'm allowed to joke about this stuff because it's about me. Like I often joke about the fact that I'm biracial and that I don't look it. And that, but then when other people have made a joke or like said a word that I would use, I'm like, no, like this isn't your area. So I don't know. That made me think about the adoption stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just babbling, but
No. No, that's great, Kat. I appreciate that. And I want to hear from, I'm going to throw him under the bus. I want to hear from Jason. I haven't heard anything. I hope he's still awake.
I'm here. I've been listening.
I'd just love to know what you think.
About what?
Comedy. What's funny?
I mean, I think you guys made so many good points and how comedy has evolved. I think just like over time, because of how diverse we are and how things have been changing with like even the racism around COVID and then the Black Lives Matter protests that happened during COVID. And then finally, like, well, the things are going on with Trump this year and then him finally leaving. Comedy has changed a lot. And I think you're right with like, it's really not okay to punch down anymore. It used to be like, especially since like even just a couple decades ago, it was mostly white and white men, where punching down was just it made you feel good if you were a white man, right? Seeing that, but yeah, it's definitely evolved and changed. I think it's actually better because if you look back and like even these movies, and even This Is the End, which came out only less than a decade ago, it's really not okay. Some of the stuff they said, and it's hurting a minority or a marginalized group. And I think it's better that things have changed and comedy is now, I mean, people can complain and say it's sensitive or it's not, like you're being a snowflake or whatever. But I think people still have like, a good sense of comedy. It's just that we don't like racism and making fun of like less wealthy groups or other countries and stuff like that. So, yeah.
I think you're right too in that the sense that nowadays we're making comedians work for the laugh. You can't be lazy these days as a comedian, and that makes people better storytellers and better like joke tellers.
Well, I don't know. I think McCarthy's kind of lazy, but I know Daniel loves her, so I won't go into that. But
I actually watched that. Did you see that superhero one with her?
no, that was the one
Only
with
half of it.
Olivia Spence or Octavia Spencer.
Yeah, it was really bad. But I mean, there was
Daniel
no.
has suddenly decided to never come back on this pod.
Daniel has left the chat.
I haven't actually watched that one yet. Thunder Force.
It's
Yeah, I'm
of course.
Fan mostly, but Thunder Force they turned off halfway through.
It was okay. The joke is that McCarthy's character is like a loser or a slob, and they keep doing that throughout most of it. But there's some other stuff. It's you know why it'll age better than the movies we just saw. Like,
It's fair.
it wasn't the funniest thing I've ever seen.
And that's sort of what I was saying with like some of the jokes in Encino Man and the fact that like they weren't funny to me, but like at least they didn't age badly. Like they just weren't funny. I just didn't find them funny. That's all.
Humor is very subjective too.
Yes, it is. I agree with that.
It's-
Go ahead. Sorry.
I don't know. Sometimes I'll think something's funny, but I won't laugh. I know it's funny, but I won't laugh to it, you know?
Why?
I don't know. It's like writing LOL to someone and it's like, oh, it's funny. It is funny. I actually do think it's funny. But I'm not actually laughing in real life or anything. I'm not laughing my ass off or rolling on
Oh my gosh,
floor.
so when you put that in the chat, you're not actually
It's all lies.
LOLing.
I'm a liar.
I feel lied to via text.
Sometimes
I've gotten so many LOLs.
like I'll smile, but I don't know.
It's true. LOL is its own thing. Like we could do a whole podcast just on LOL because like I never laugh out loud when I'm writing LOL. But if I do it in all caps, I do mean that I think it's funny, but I'm not laughing out loud. Anyway,
I've actually been trying not to use LOL as much anymore. If I'm not actually laughing.
now you're writing bwahaha.
Just it's something else now.
He's trying out a new laugh.
That's right.
LOL has just become a filler word.
Yes.
Yeah.
So instead of just leaving somebody on red, you just say LOL.
My grandma died. LOL.
Lots of love.
The silence.
Lots of love.
Lots of love. Lots of love. Yep.
Instead
yeah.
of leaving it on red.
All right, we got to do our vote, but before we do that, I figure let's throw it out there. Your go-to comedy to bring you up, and just whatever it is. I would just love to know what it is.
Oh, gee.
What's your go-to?
It's tied between two.
Ooh.
My favorite comedies are action comedies.
see
So
that.
my top two are either Deadpool, just because I just find it really, really funny. Yeah, there's stuff in it that's offensive, but like sort of what we were saying, it's done well, and it's not done in a way that makes you feel gross. But the other one is actually Tag.
That's
love
a funny
Tag.
movie.
I've never seen it.
You could have picked that.
Should have went with Ted.
We should have went with
Tag.
Tag. That movie's
Redo
so
this
good.
episode. Delete it.
Oh, you could have
Delete.
picked Tag.
We'll do
Oh,
it for
that movie's
miscellaneous.
hilarious. That movie's actually quite funny.
Oh, we can do it for miscellaneous.
We
Yeah.
can do it for miscellaneous.
Okay.
JT's
I
like,
will-
oh yes, I love that movie.
Okay, go ahead. What else? What else? Go-to comedy.
It's actually a Seth Rogen, Jonah Hill, and Michael Cera in this. But I think it's a great movie. Super bad. It's like one of the classic coming to age stories. And from my memory, I think it's aged decently.
I haven't seen it. I've
I
never-
will give you that. That was one of the Seth Rogen movies that I was like, okay, that was funny.
Yes. My favorite scene in that and this came out 2008. It's like one of the first comedies I've ever seen. Is the scene where, since you've seen it, Kat, the scene where their friend gets a fake ID. Yeah, and it's like, they need a fake ID because they're in high school. They want to buy beer, and then their friend's an idiot, and the card is on the card. It says his name is McLovin, and there's no last name. They totally pick this apart. They're like, there's no last name. There's only a first name. It says you're 26. Why didn't you just pick 19?
And then, from Hawaii.
Yeah, he's like, and why are you from Hawaii? And the guy goes through his logic. It's hilarious. He's like, well, how many 19-year-olds are there? There's too many. I just picked the random number. It's like,
no one can question Hawaii.
Yeah, it's a great movie from what I remember. It could be totally dated now and super sexist. Maybe. I haven't seen it in a while.
Yeah, I haven't seen it since it came out.
Kat, Daniel?
I don't think I have one specific movie. I think I'm gonna mention her again. Like pretty much any Melissa McCarthy movie.
Oh man.
I love a good Medea movie.
Oh.
White Chicks comes to mind. I guess that's probably a specific movie. I like White Chicks. I think
you probably like Ernest Goes to Jail, Steve.
I think White Chicks holds up. There's nothing offensive at all. Yeah, I think, I don't know, Melissa McCarthy movie, Medea movie, White Chicks. Something that's like kind of like dumb, but it's not lazy.
Okay. Kat?
Right now, it's usually my go-to sleeping shows because I've watched them so much. I really love Brooklyn Nine-Nine. It has made me laugh out loud. And I was really into The Office and Friends, but I was in the hospital once and my brother came and was sitting with me and I was like, I need to be distracted. And so he read to me from Jim Gaffigan's Fat Dad, I think it was, or Love Affair with Food. And Jim Gaffigan and Seinfeld are two comedians that I will die laughing at, but I remember I needed more oxygen because I was laughing so hard at Jim Gaffigan.
I would like you to completely scrap my answers. As much as I love Tag, I was thinking about it because like I kind of like those were the first two that came to mind. I was thinking about it more. I have changed my answer to Get Smart. That movie has made me I have watched that movie so many times. The mini harpoon scene in the airplane bathroom is probably one of my favorite comedy movie scenes of all time. It is so funny.
Do you know what you're going to hate is that I haven't seen that either.
You have to watch it. You have to.
That one's a ton of fun. And I mean, I loved the show. I mean, I wasn't alive.
I watched the show, yeah.
But it's perfect. It's perfect if you love the show. It's like note perfect. He's good. He's good.
Mr. Bean always made me laugh too sometimes.
Oh yeah. I used to like Mr. Bean.
Ace Ventura makes me laugh sometimes.
Chaplin's hilarious.
Ace Ventura never made me laugh. That was I loved. Okay, so I'm not gonna lie. Probably like Jim Carrey stuff. Some of Jim Carrey's stuff still kills me. Dumb and Dumber still makes me laugh. Some of the early Adam Sandler stuff is so good. Like Wedding Singer and 50 First Dates makes me laugh. Happy Gilmore makes me laugh. My go-to comedy, which I've watched a million times, is Talladega Nights.
Really?
That movie slays me. The Ballad of Ricky Bobby. It is so.
You've never seen it, Riley?
Oh,
I think you would laugh pretty hard.
It's so.
So would you, Daniel?
So dumb. It is so dumb. I can quote it endlessly. But the scene where I've used it in a sermon. The seat where they're all sitting around the table, and they're arguing about grace, and they're arguing about the different ways that they view Jesus. And he's like, I like to think of Jesus, and he's singing lead vocals for Lynyrd Skynyrd, and I'm in the front row, and I'm hammered drunk, and I'm like, I kill myself laughing, honestly, every time I watch it.
Dear, sweet, innocent baby Jesus.
6 pounds 7 ounces, can't even talk yet, but knows everything. So it's so stupid. It's so stupid. Anyway, all right, let's do this. Here we go. Vote of the week. Encino Man. This is the end. What do you got?
Unfortunately, for all of the moral standards that I stand for, in terms of agreeing with Steve, I am going to be giving my vote to Encino Man.
Yeah, let's go.
However, not because I laughed more at Encino Man, because I most definitely did not, but just for the fact that there were so many more jokes in This Is the End that made me just want to throw myself off a bridge than there were in Encino Man. If I were to go back and watch one, I would go back and watch Encino Man over This Is the End.
All right. Kat, what do you say?
Well, I mean, clearly my vote goes for This Is the End.
This is the end? No.
I'm gonna go Encino Man. I don't remember it being as funny as it was in 1990, whatever. But yeah, I'd pretty much vote for A Pile of Rocks over This Is the End. So,
Daniel?
Can I vote for none of them?
You gotta
no,
pick
you
one.
must pick.
Again, I think I laughed more at This Is the End,
Offended.
but I feel like as a whole, I had a worse experience with This Is the End. So, like, reluctantly, I'll give it to the 90s, but only because you mentioned Clueless earlier. And I love Clueless, and that's a 90s movie.
Daniel's voting for Encino Man because we brought up Clueless.
I'm voting for Clueless, actually.
I would second that vote.
Yeah. No, I'll.
You're not a horrible person if you pick This Is the End, by the way. No one is judging anybody.
Yes, you are.
What?
I'm judging you.
Catherine is judging, but I will not.
A joke.
No, I'll give it to Encino Man. I guess overall it was a better movie. It wasn't that funny, but I guess it was back then.
Jason?
Oh man. Like, I feel like it's way too hard to pick This Is the End now, because all the allegations, and then like every time James Franco is on screen now, you're like, oh, that's the guy who's evil.
What?
That's the bad guy. He's a bad guy. So I don't know. It's hard to pick that. And then there were a lot of like gross moments and cringe moments with This Is the End that I forgot. And so I guess I'll choose Encino Man.
I can't believe this is happening.
We've got it recorded.
You know what's funny? Well, not funny, but all these allegations came like so recently, like before, like a week ago or whatever, like right before we picked.
What, against Franco?
Yeah.
They've been there, but I think it was mostly Seth Rogen stepping up and saying he wasn't going to work with him in the last week to try to get out of the fact that he not only joked about it, but did some other stuff. But yeah, ever since, for a while now, yeah. But what if he didn't have the allegations against him and you weren't thinking of him as
I
a
would
person?
still pick Encino Man.
Yeah.
It's like asking, what if Hitler didn't do all the things he did?
What if you could go back in time and kill baby Hitler?
What would you do? What if you could go back in time and kill Franco?
Wow. Wow.
I might just put him into a treatment program first. But
Well,
Hitler, baby.
in no way with my vote of Encino Man did I expect to be voting a perfect 5-0. Like I almost feel like I should vote for This Is the End, but I can't even get those words out of my mouth.
Do it, I dare you.
I can't do it. There we go. Encino Man is the funniest movie in history.
Told ya. You
there-
mocked me when I brought it
I
up.
did. I did not believe, but Catherine proved me wrong.
Polly Shore
No, I
lives
think
on in
we
all our
proved
hearts.
you wrong.
Well, I think what we both agreed is that we all have terrible taste in comedy. No, that's
I want to watch Tag now. We should do this over again, but with Tag.
with Tag. Tag's great. Oh, Tag would slap Encino Man. It's not even close. I would pick Tag over Encino Man. Well, thank you, everyone. Love doing this. I'm excited about next week. We're bringing in sci-fi. You know, we ended on End of the World here, and then next week, the End of the World cometh. So we'll get our sci-fi picks on there. We're excited about that. I'm glad that we can do this, continue on our series. And so thank you all. And for you at home, a reminder that if I can think of my tagline, which I don't know if I can remember it anymore, it doesn't matter if you've missed the movies. What matters is if it matters to you. And we will see you next week.